So in this video I played Shadow of the Tomb Raider in 2025. Now I have played and also done a video on this game before, but I wanted to do an updated and a more polished review and just add more of my thoughts on the game, but unlike the other games I've returned to and sort of changed the style of and then did live gameplay, this one is an actual voiceover review. So the game is now 7 years old, releasing in 2018, which is kind of crazy. Of course, I've played the other games in the trilogy, so Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider, which were also great, and this game is the final one in the series. And it has been cool to see how much it's ever so slightly changed over the 3 games, but still heavily staying on the same formula. And it also means, and something I mentioned last time I believe, if you really didn't enjoy the other 2 games, then you most likely aren't going to enjoy this one, as each game from the first has just been improved every time, whether that's the visuals or the gameplay with small gameplay features added, and I'd say that they do get better each time and there's not really any flaws with them when they add or they change something. And if you love one game, then you're most likely a big fan of the entire trilogy because it's just more of what you already enjoyed. Another thing I would say about the game and the trilogy as a whole, it's not like it's a massive RPG open world game. It's very linear, like an Uncharted game or a Resident Evil, I guess. It means there isn't really much the developers can mess up or really add a lot to before it becomes, too different compared to the other games. It's the same set of main characters, that being Lara and Jonah, who are still trying to track down and stop the Trinity, who are basically the military group, which we knew from the other games. And the conflict follows through the entire series, and they're trying to find the Lost Kingdom and then take Lara's artifacts. And then Lara wants these to do research on, and that is basically the plot. And if we get into the actual changes they did make in the final game, and more so the pros of them, a big one being the whole gear and the resource system, which is way less forced at the start of the game compared to the other titles, because in Rise of the Tomb Raider, even though Lara had already built up quite a gear loadout in the first game, it's like we started completely from scratch in the second one and we had to build it up all over again as if she's a beginner, although it's obvious she isn't. And it's not to say that we don't start the game like that in this game, but it's way less, and it doesn't start, it doesn't go on for near as long, and that's mainly because we lose most of our gear at the start, so I guess fair enough. But it also just makes sense, and it's clear that Lara is now quite experienced, and you even get that from her dialogue, where she sounds less, scared, but also the gameplay as well, it just feels way more fast paced, that being in the stealth and the parkour. And even like the gun combat just feels smooth. Like taking people down with a melee, it did feel slower in the previous games. It's not to say that the takedowns are extremely realistic and varied. I mean, a lot of them do feel quite basic. It would be cool if there was a bit more variety in the animations and the speed of them. But also the character of Lara in the cutscenes, where she looks a lot stronger and focused in like crazy situations, which is as expected because how much she's done in the other titles. The game is all set in Peru and Mexico, and definitely added much more detail and variety to the world. A big part of the game, which was obvious from the cover, was that it was going to have a lot of jungle in it compared to the more snowy and mountainous areas in the game before. However, it never really started to feel repetitive, in the setting wise, or sort of samey, and a lot of thought had gone into the setting and the visual. I loved the use of colour and the lighting, like the sun shining through the trees or on the water. It's just beautiful really, and it still is my favourite setting in the series. Again, you can interact with the environment and use it to your advantage. Of course, in traversing with parkour, much more versatility there, like gaining momentum with the wall running feature, and it just means you can jump bigger gaps that could be too far to get to. I feel like there's a bit more difficulty, I guess, in the parkour because of it, and the features added, which just made for more of a challenge and kept it a bit fresh, as I did mess up quite a few times, which I've probably cut the footage of, and it had also been a good while since I played the game, mainly just like missing certain ledges or with the grapple where I might have jumped a bit too quickly. Another like prominent addition with parkour was abseiling with your rappel to reach like far down places or to swing further from. So there's a few new parkour features, but there's also that added on to all the main mechanics we've already seen. For anyone that doesn't know, there's your pickaxe to climb walls, the grapple axe to hook onto areas in midair, which is a lot of fun, and I did see myself, using it more in this game, I feel like. And then there's the same like general movement mechanics, which I guess felt a bit smoother, like quickly crouch walking and rolling, or double tapping to run up certain walls. levels. There's just tons of variety in the movement and the parkour, and it's a standout part of the series, and this game just does it the best for me. In terms of stealth combat again, you could always hide in bushes and tall grasses, but you can now use mud to like blend into muddy areas or blend into the vines on the wall to either like hide or just to use it to your advantage again when taking down enemies. I didn't really have to do it much, but you can also hide in seaweed because you wouldn't really see a need in doing this, but sometimes you actually have to because some fish will actually try to attack you underwater, and that will help you hide from them. Or you may have to properly fight some fish with your knife, which was interesting. I didn't really expect it the first time it happened. Something I also mentioned last time was how there's way more cutscenes and just areas in the game that tend to take a bit of a step back from the action and focus more on Lara as a person and just her like relationship with Jonah, much more than the previous game. It feels like they're way closer and just makes you connect more to them. There is some nice moments and cutscenes with the NPCs you talk to in the hub, which I suppose is also a new feature. The hubs are just like big areas between missions that you can always return to, allowing you to trade with characters or upgrade your loadout at the campfire or just different stations, and then just to talk to NPCs. It's quite good for more like exploration and a bit of a change in pace, I guess, between the action for anyone that does want that. In terms of the upgrade system, you can unlock rewards as you go through the missions or just finding them, and then you can trade loot for gold to help buy different weapons, which then offers a good amount, and you can also buy resources you can't find. Although most of them are fairly common, which you can set in the difficulty level as well. The same with combat and puzzles. And then on top of that, there's the skill tree system, and it's split up into 3 sections: Seeker, Scavenger and Warrior. And like most skill trees, you can only buy the first like base levels before branching out into the others. It means the gameplay is always changing and your character is always becoming stronger as you play, making you want to move forward really. There's a decent selection in the upgrades towards your weapons, so there's a good handful of bow varieties to choose from, with lots of detail in the stats they give you when upgrading, so you actually know what difference it will actually have, like the reinforced limbs to increase tension, higher speed and then the damage. The same goes with gun upgrades, which help a lot in terms of the accuracy and the damage. The stats would definitely helpful to me. It's also great how it doesn't force you to use a certain type of weapon. Like I'm sure people prefer the primal theme of it all and could be a bit thrown off when they heard guns were added. But you don't have to use them, and it also seems like there's more upgrades and changes with the bows compared to the guns. And there's still a few attachments to unlock for the guns, like there's barrels and there's grips. And I sort of forgot about the character customization in terms of the outfits. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but there's a few that stand out and fit the jungle theme with a great use of colour, and I'm actually using quite a unique one in some of the clips. They also use some of the same or very similar ones seen in the other games, and even a throwback to the really old like low poly Tomb Raider, which changes her entire model, which was pretty cool. And then I do want to speak on the puzzles, and I mean that is a big part of the game, and it seems like that side of gameplay was probably pushed more than the combat side in this game, which was different and not everyone will love hearing that. However, because there was more of it, it did have a bit more variation and it wasn't too repetitive. Puzzles are a big aspect of the entire series, including the older games. A big tool you will be using is the rope launcher, and around like the middle part of the game, it did feel like every puzzle had me using that. And it means you work on your timing and your accuracy, having to move different structures and wheels. Some are quicker than others and you have to be quick, but I must say, and I'm pretty sure I said it before, I did get quite frustrated a few times in the puzzles where they could also be the same, if not more, for other players, and even ones for people that have played the previous games. But then again, there's more variety, I suppose. There's definitely some that feel a bit off and a bit like clunky, which made it less fun sometimes and probably a bit more difficult. But overall it does add a change in the gameplay and separates it from the action. The performance of the game I do want to mention. I didn't have the game on very high graphics, and if anything it had it set in the middle area, and it did seem to be okay after that, but there were odd moments when transitioning into a larger area or a cutscene, for example where the frames would drop a lot or even spike. Nothing wild though. And just compared to the other games, the mechanics and the animations in every aspect really have been smoother, like parkour movements or just traversing through the world, and seeing its incredible detail and again animations in leaves and wildlife. So for anyone that has already played the others, it's a very simple answer that you should definitely check out this one. It's of course going to have a very similar formula and feel to it, whether that be the gameplay, the story, the parkour, etc. Just with a bunch of small improvements, so why not? And I can easily recommend the entire trilogy, and even for a beginner, or especially for a beginner, because it isn't the most groundbreaking game or complex game. It's very linear, and the first game is even more so, with a very simple story and theme, but just a great action adventure that you can't really pick at, to be honest. And I had a great time playing this game the second time round. So if you did enjoy this video, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy its single player and also multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel does focus on. I have many playlists on a selection of games, so you can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. If you'd like to support me any further, then I do have a membership page on the channel, so you can gain access to various perks. Thank you all for the support and watching until the very end. And that was Shadow of the Tomb Raider in 2025, and bye bye.